light on? Excellent. Hey, everybody.
Good.
Nice shirt.
Oh, thank you. Great minds.
All right, good morning. I'd like to call to order the Technology and Finance Operations Subcommittee for the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District. It's 5:01. Is anyone else going to gavel in, or just us? Did you have a question?
We have one member that's on the Zoom, if it's open, and then we have another member, Joe Wallace, he's stuck in traffic at Boston Road for some reason.
Okay.
He'll be in here in a minute.
Sure. All right. Why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And the flag is right over here. I'll start. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So let's jump right into capital expenses, capital expenditures. We have a proposal here to. Excellent.
Do you have one, Mike? Can you just pass that down? Turn it over to Tammy?
Yeah, I'll give one to Cammie.
And just to turn it over, do you want her to present?
Yeah, we're going to have Cammie present. She is our interim acting finance director, superintendent, all-around awesome human. And over there we have Doug, who will be, hopefully January 1st, will be coming in and.
Not hopefully.
No, hopefully, definitely.
No, he's definitely.
He definitely. All right, that's it. That's it.
So,
go ahead.
Just so everybody knows everybody.
Oh, do you want to do introductions? Yeah,
Yeah.
let's start with introductions. I'm Sean Kennedy. I'm the vice chair of the school committee, and I'm the chair of the technology, finance, and operations subcommittee.
John Provost, HWRSD superintendent.
Michael Massier, Facilities Director.
Nick Bro, Town Administrator for Wilbraham.
Todd Schneider, Finance.
Doug Boyd, Hampton Advisory.
Nick Manalakis, Capital Planning, Wilbraham.
Bill Powers, Technology Director.
Kathy Pessolano, Hampden Advisory Board.
Michelle Boudreaux, School Committee Chair.
Sam Boyd, Facilities Director for Wilbraham.
Excellent. All right, super.
Okay.
Well, we have as an observer. We have Tim, who's also on the school committee. One time no see. All right, Cammie, tell you.
Okay. So I'm going to try to go in the same order that your sheets are in. Slough Road is the first. So what we did is Aaron did a lot of this work, just so you all know. Aaron did a lot of this work before he left, putting this together. So I just went over it with Mike Messier, superintendent, and Doug, just to try to update a little bit and finish up on some of it and put some priorities in it for you as well. So a lot of that work is here. I'll try to go in the same order that the sheets are in, just so that way we can make life easier without having to flip pages too much. I don't know, with the same printed screen, we'll take a look at here. So we did a 10-year projected capital plan of what we see are the capital needs of the district for each one of the schools. This year we also added facilities of some equipment needs that they have as well that we'll put on the last sheet. So Slough Road is the first one. When it comes down to addressing some of the capital needs, Mike is aware of some of what's going on with the buildings more so than I am, to be honest. And we tried to address a number of things that are going on, and also Bill Powers is here for the technology piece, so if we have some specific questions with the technology. The coding on the front of the sheet, the orange ones, are continued from prior years, so we put in requests from prior years that haven't been able to be met so far. So we wanted to roll those forward because there's still the need exists. And we've also put, and for our left corner, we also put a priority based on the principals' needs of what the priorities are for them in each one of the schools. We've also indicated for some of them things that we've been able to fund in other ways, more so in the previous years, because this is a rolling list for us. So it goes back to fiscal 22 or 23 is what we've seen. And we tried to put some notes on the right-hand side for all of you. Okay, so I don't know if you want to take a minute, look down, you want me to read each one of them, whatever's your pleasure, and you don't want to.
Just a quick question on replacing the desks and chairs. I know we have, at Thornton Burgess, I know there's like rooms full of furniture, and I'm sure over at Memorial School, I heard there's also other rooms full of furniture that I don't think the school's gonna utilize. Is that something that potentially would fit this rather than purchasing new chairs?
We will have to take a look at what's available. And when it comes to Thornton Burgess, we need to determine where and how it was purchased, because it was purchased by Hampton, it needs to stay in that building is our understanding.
Okay.
So then we would not be able to move it, other than Green Meadows if we needed to. But that's something that we would need to talk about. And the chair.
Unless there was something that was actually appropriate for Sewell and Hampton wanted to surplus it.
Correct. So we need to make a determination of what's there and where we can
Grade
use it.
specific also?
And actually, that's scheduled out for fiscal '27. So right now, this is a 10-year plan, but the first column under fiscal '26 is the one that would be really up for discussion this year as far as funding possibilities and then knowing what's going out in future years.
Just-
Making everybody aware.
Just to offer a note on the color coding, which I think is relevant here. Orange is continued from prior years' capital requests, so you can see it's loading up on the first year because so many items are deferred, they're just kind of rolling over into the next new year.
Just, if it's not color-coded, that's the first time it's appearing on the list, period. Okay, thank you.
And the ones that have been funded are pretty much in the previous year, so that's why they're not on here. But the colors that are like that bright blue, they're either completed with district funds, so that's why they're not really on this piece. But
Okay.
Want to take this?
No, that's all right.
Put this right here.
Next to Michelle. Okay.
Do we have an extra one of these?
You can make the copy.
Yep.
Oh, so we got it right there. Perfect.
I got the screen.
Okay.
Mike Terabasi, School Committee.
Okay, so I don't know if you prefer to go down the list and just take a look if you have questions about particular ones.
So, what's the assessed value of Sewell School?
The assessed value of it,
Yeah.
we'd have to take a look at.
Are we getting to a point where we're creeping into having to do a full upgrade?
We'd have to take a look at Sewell Road, whether, depending on the age of that building and the needs of the middle school and Sewell Road, what would be the priority?
1970, right?
Both about the same.
Yep. I mean,
I grew up in Wilbraham, went to schools in Wilbraham. Those schools were built when I was going to them. I did not go to Sewell Road. It was built because we were at Wilbraham Memorial School. So I'm well aware of when they were built.
no, I know, I just.
And attended many of them.
So I guess my biggest concern is if you add them all up, it's a $17 million ask for this year, which I think is probably not everything on this list can pass this year. So I don't know if there's a way that, if there's a way that says, hey, listen, the windows and doors, they're you know, there's an asphalt, it's $3 million out of the 6. That actually can go to, we could probably get 2 years out of that, and then 4 years out of that, and get a better idea of a timeline, because unless you are saying you need $17 million this year, which is troublesome.
Well, just one reaction I have to that is, if you look at the first one, you'll see that some of the things that are on the list are potentially eligible for MSB accelerated repair. Right now, they haven't even done the statement of interests yet, so it's likely that that would, in fact, even if you decided to start to work on doing the MSBA process, now would get pushed out. So anything where you see that accelerated repair, I would say probably wouldn't be done possibly next year. Unless you decided you didn't want to participate in MSBA.
Well, my understanding from the past was that we couldn't get the MSBA loans unless we did a full accessibility upgrade to the building, because it had to be compliant with the handicap standards.
Usually once you get a certain percentage.
Because
like
based on
we
the
said, about
assessed
50%
value.
Of the assessed value, once you start upgrading more than that, they make you bring everything up to code.
Correct, so in order for us to do the windows at Sewell Road, we would have to know the assessed value of the building, right?
Right, and I can.
And I thought we had requested that, and I thought we were like very close, if not.
That's,
Yeah,
I think it is
a lot less.
30%.
I think it was like 25 or 30%.
This is all publicly, I just looked up Sewell Road, it's just over $80 million appraised value per GIS website.
And then the MSBA standard is 30%?
It's not MSBA, it's the.
ADA.
ADA. Yes, the architectural board, I think that is the authority there.
So windows and doors automatically put you over that cap.
Unless you break it.
Doors are done.
No, sorry, windows and asphalt. I apologize. That's when that was.
So then the question would be, can we break the project out into
the regulations, they anticipate that, and they say if you spend X number of dollars over a certain period of time, you still trigger the code upgrade requirement.
But yeah, am I correct that the asphalt will not trigger that?
There's a couple of things that are exempted.
Yeah, I thought asphalt,
I haven't looked at it for a while,
It's
but.
usually the proper.
yeah, it's not the building proper, yeah.
I don't think that $8 million assessment is accurate. Like, I know the middle school was just recently reassessed, and it's assessed at like 27 million. Makes it difficult for me to believe that Sewell Road could be assessed at 8 million.
If you
If the
can get
middle school's at
27 million
27.
for that building.
Yeah, I'm just telling you
So that-
information that was given to me that makes it hard for me to swallow that Sewell Road is
So
8
it's-
million.
So, and even Thornton Burgess, I know, is assessed at 8 million also. And they're relatively, I would say they're relatively the same size.
That was pretty recent. Okay, so maybe it is accurate.
I mean, that's just something we have to factor in, because some of the projects, capital planning in Wilbraham looked at doing the windows at Sewell, and that was like a major issue that we ran into a couple of years back. And then the other issue that we ran into was if we do accessibility upgrades, the concern was like if we start cutting into the door frames to move everything over up there, is there asbestos there? Because other parts of the building has asbestos.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the tile, the pipe.
Yep,
Fittings.
so it's like, are those costs gonna be accurate if they discover that every single project that we do as an upgrade is dealing with abatement? That's like one of the major hurdles that we run into.
Yeah, the windows, the caulking more than likely has asbestos in it also. So now you're into enclosures.
Correct. So just food for thought there. I mean, I think there's some projects on here that we really have to figure out, like a schedule for how long can some of these things go, because the $17 million is never going to happen in 1 year. So we have to create like a game plan for, okay, what is the highest need that needs to be done in the next year versus what can be delayed 3 to 5 years. You know, kind of like a 3 to 5 year schedule. What can be pushed out, what can't. I mean, there's some stuff on here that's probably subject to, is this a necessary project versus this is something that would be nice to have. We've been kicking that around with the generators at Stony Hill. It's like, it'd be nice to have, but realistically, if the power goes out 3 times a year and we've managed to get by, maybe we bank that and put the money towards something else. So.
Right, I think we did a study, it was 3 times a year, and 1 time in the last 10 years, you dismissed school because of no power.
Correct. So it was like, do we want to spend $250,000 on something like this when there might be other issues that are more
And I
high
think what
priority?
we have to take a look at is with the generators for sure. As I mentioned to Mike and the superintendent yesterday, it's not necessarily to keep the power on so we could have school.
Yeah, we
It's
said
it's to keep the heat in the buildings going, to preserve your buildings, just like you would at home and
yeah,
have some second.
but what we were told is that when the power goes out, they had portable generators that they brought in. It's obviously an inconvenience and it's not a long-term solution, but if the power's only going out a couple times a year, what's the justifiable cost?
And I think what we would look at also is if we have buildings that are persistently going out versus the rare ones. And I think that's what we have, one or two buildings that seem to be going out much more often than the others. Those become a little bit more problematic. Maybe you don't put in 6 generators, you put one in the 2 problematic schools, or the one most problematic school that you're trying to preserve as much as you can, is what I would advocate for, just to try to make sure we, you know, like when we had that tornado years ago, and then we had the winter storm a few months later, we lost power for days. Those were very troubling times that, you know, people were trying to figure out how to keep things. It's not necessarily to keep the buildings open so we can continue to have school or even emergency shelter piece. It's to preserve the buildings that things don't freeze. I don't want to lose those buildings. And
We
have,
froze the middle school one year.
yeah,
It was bad.
yeah. And I've had one school that had a number of rooms that were frozen, but not the whole school. We were lucky.
Well, we didn't freeze the whole school, but pretty much the whole level of rolling with it.
Yeah, so it's a concern, and that's where I just wanted to address the concern of why the generators are there.
I would say, you know, this is anecdotal, but from my experience being here 2.5 years, it's something about Stony Hill Road. It's the middle school, Stony Hill and Sewell that have problems with power outages. I don't know if you see that in other parts of town, or if that's...
It's a big pine trees.
Yeah.
A lot of transformers are getting old too, and they're just popping.
So forgive me for being late for the meeting. Are these, where did the estimates come from? Are these,
They were done by previous administrations.
So, I mean, these things could be way under too.
well, it could be way under.
It's so hard to judge today. I mean, we talk with engineers and people that build it by and build stuff all the time, and they'll say it should cost this, and it's coming in 20–30% higher.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the norm right now, and it's so hard to grasp onto a solid number like it was in the past.
So most likely, as a minimum, we're gonna need $9 million over the next 10 years to keep Sewell up and running, potentially. That's what we're saying, so $900,000 a year.
I wouldn't say up and running. You're trying to, I mean, it's a school from 1970s, so.
Yeah. Well, how would you phrase it then, to keep it in good working condition?
Operational, so we can
Operational?
Yeah,
educate students
Up and running
there.
is, if I get, okay, so we need $9 million over 10 years is what we're projecting out. So 900,000 a year is what we need to be thinking about for capital spending.
And that figure will just go up and up and up.
I
Because a
just-
lot of these projects have been on here for many, many, many years, and they just keep going and going and going and going.
But I think that's a testament to like what is the actual need for these projects. Like if they've been able to push these things out for years, then if we had done those 7 years prior, we could have put it off and done something else, right? That's why I think there needs to be like a schedule. Like what is the actual priority of these projects so that as a community we can decide, okay, what can be pushed off? Just like owning your own house, right? Like maybe I can get an extra 4 years out of my roof, so now I'm gonna do my boiler instead, and whatever it might be, we just have to figure out that priority list.
Well, you
I
do have
think
the...
the danger,
The
though,
priorities
I
are
just
on
wanna
the-
make
on
a
the
comment to that, and then let talk about the priorities. Danger is, like, there's a lot of things here that have been cans kicked down the road. You know, the pile keeps getting bigger, right? It's a $6 million pile now, you know, a couple of years from now, it could be an $8 million, you know what I mean? I think it's a great idea and responsible idea to have a schedule, but there has to be commitment to it.
But there has been
And there
projects.
has to be a schedule.
There have been projects done there. It's not like it's been ignored.
Yes, there have been projects done, but like, when I look at these numbers, I think I have the same initial reaction as everyone, is that I choke on them. Because these are huge numbers, knowing what I know about at least Wilbraham's finances and the school district's finances. But I look at these numbers and I'm like, I think we are repeating some of the mistakes of the past, and we're pushing a little bit too much in the way of cans down the road. And we're not staying on top of the things the way we should, and I'm concerned that when these numbers get big enough, then there'll be unsalvageable situations down the line that will cost the town a lot more than it really should. Like,
More than
like,
$9 million.
like, well, yeah, if we have to rebuild an elementary school, we might be looking at, $50 to $100 million.
Easily.
right? And that's exactly what happened with the building we're sitting in now. The old Minichild Capitol was kicked down the road, and then it was unsalvageable. Fortunately, when this was built, it was only a $65 million building, because it was 12 years ago. But East Long Meadow, you know, similar sized building, they had to spend $100 million. But I completely agree with the schedule plan, but commitment to stick to it.
I mean,
And now, I think, but John's gonna have the most insight.
the spending capacity is gonna be your issue. Like, the town of Wilbraham decided to put in a new fire, police, and senior center.
Mhm.
And in order to do so and in order to save the taxpayer money, we front-loaded some of what we were spending on these projects. And so now on the back end, we don't have the capacity to do a lot of these. I think that's an issue that we have to figure out as a community, is like, yeah, we have 9 million in projects, but as a capital planning committee, we have 1.5 to 3 million to spend on a good year. And there are years where we've had 900,000. And like, then we go to the schools and unfortunately we tell them like, hey, we're sorry, we have 900,000 to spend throughout the entire town. And even if we threw you guys 750, that checks maybe a couple boxes here. You know, and so I think we have a larger issue at hand too, which is where do we come up with the financing to do some of these projects?
So I think both of your comments lead into what I was going to say. So you do have priorities here for the principal, who spends the most time actually managing that facility. If you look at her top 3 priorities, there's actually 2 that are scheduled for this year. One is the windows and blinds. I know that's for security. One is for the double entry system Raptor kiosk. That's for security. That's $420,000. The next priority she has is the playground update that on this plan is not even in this year. So that's what I want to say about priorities. In terms of schedule, yes, I agree that it is vitally important to have some kind of a schedule so that you can manage cash flow on this. I think part of the problem is that everything has gotten bunched up into this year because it's been kicked from other years. But as I look at these 2 things, I would think the most critical thing is to not be doing your roof and your windows at the same time. So if you could space those out, you'd be getting reimbursement from MSBA that you could roll from one project into the next project. But if you're doing them simultaneously, I think it's crippling.
Yeah, and with the roof, Mike, it's
The roof is originally, well, it's 1997,
Yeah, so 27 years old already.
you know, and it has a 15-year warranty. Every month we're fixing roofs someplace. I mean, it's nonstop on roofing.
No, but with the roofs, at some point, it becomes, you need to replace them, you need to do something, because then the water gets in, then you have bigger issues.
Your decking, your roof trussing, because when it
Water
starts
coming
slow,
in, the
it just
mold
starts
gets in the
rusting,
walls, you're gonna have
rusting,
issues,
rusting,
so-
rusting, till it can actually come through someplace, and then we're notified, hey, we got a leak.
And we can continue to keep looking for MSBA funding when they either do accelerated repair programs, that's the biggest one for a roof project, other than building a school or an addition, is the accelerated repair. And when they send us notice, it's up to the towns if they want to also work with us to do that. But as soon as we get notice of its availability and of funding, we can put forward an application for it and see where we end up. And it would help if we knew from the town's perspective of, if you have a priority, then we put the application, usually they want us to put in one. So if we have 2 or 3 projects, which one would the town like to support would probably be the best thing that we could know ahead of time. So when the application comes, we put in an application for that one, standing a chance to get that one.
One recommendation, I don't know if this came up before I got here, but it came up during our finance committee meeting, is once a project does get approved, we've got to work with it to immediately. I think that the fire system one didn't get finished yet, but it came up that some of the costs associated with these may go up, right? So it may be $120,000 today, it could be $175,000 by the time we get around doing it. So once we approve them, I think we've got to just be really prudent and really efficient with getting the project completed so that we don't have a higher cost project. So I would definitely recommend that.
I think the key to that, and what my experience has been, is as soon as we know the appropriation's approved, go out to bid. get a contract, get it locked down price, because then they honor it.
We have that from-
What we got stuck with sometimes is there's some work that can only be done while the school's closed.
Yep.
But at least if we go out to bid and we get a contract, that they will honor the price, knowing that they can't do the work until June, that helps.
And we did that.
Yeah.
You were saying that some years you have, 900,000, some years you have a couple million, right? And then you said, but if the money's not there, is there another option? Like, is there a way that we could say, okay, listen, we can allocate a certain amount of money per year, right? And then we can just start filling in over the next 10 years, whatever, or 5 years or whatever, just try to get these covered, get these done, reprioritize everything like that, but then know that we have a certain amount that we can really actually get done. Is there a way to come up with financing? I don't know whether it's through a loan or something like that. Is there something that we can do that would be in the best interest of the town to preserve these buildings so they don't fall into disrepair with an exorbitant cost to replenish the building or redo the building?
I would lean on Nick for that, but I mean, the only way to do these projects with money that we don't have is to go out to bond. And then you're financing them at whatever the current rate is, and then you're spreading that payment out over X amount of time. I mean, we have done a good job as a town to lower our bond exposure, and we've been paying for a lot of stuff out of pocket, which has reduced our interest costs. So that's been a huge win, but with some of these bigger projects, it's just hard to pay out of pocket for.
I think though, the point that came up during last finance committee meeting as well, is I think Sean makes a good point, is it probably didn't realize where he's going with this, but some of these projects, if we wait 5 years to do them, are gonna be so much more expensive. We may have been better off financing now, getting them done for the cost. I'm not suggesting we spend $6 million today, but I think there's a balance of what we spend money on in terms of, like, look at asphalt, for instance, continues to go up in cost. So with some of these projects, maybe we do some earlier than later, but we are also paying for the senior center, so that's a huge event. I was just looking at the numbers on that, what the bonding's gonna be for that, and you're talking about a significant amount of money. So in some years we have more, some we have less. You're talking about 20 years from now, we'll have the senior center. I think it's 20 years we'll pay off the senior center, is what we're looking at. So, you may pay off in 15 if we want on it at 15 years, but you're sort of waiting for some of those things to drop off so you don't have huge escalations in cost each year.
Yeah, but I don't think if you looked all the way back for decades, I don't think anything ever got cheaper within reason. So like, I think at the end of the day, it's, you do a project because it's necessary, not because, I think we have to walk that fine line. Like, we know things are gonna get more expensive, but we don't do it just to do it. Because we could have done windows 10 years ago. The windows we've now stretched out for 10 years. If we had done them 10 years ago, we'd have to do them 10 years sooner.
Well,
So like,
no.
you're gonna pay again on the back end.
Yeah, but then also you gotta look at how much energy have we wasted, how much heating has gone through the windows, how much, what's the real cost of not doing these windows? And
Can't
every
get
little
parts
piece
for 'em,
here.
some are inoperable.
Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just saying, like,
yeah.
that was an example, but pick anything out. It's like, all right, if the
Do all the
project
No, I
makes
agree.
it
lock
goes up-
I agree
securely.
with you.
Do all the windows lock securely?
Yes.
There's always efficiency upgrades. We wanted to do this project. Our biggest issue was whether MSBA would actually fund the project. That was our biggest concern.
You have to do the statement of interest.
Correct.
Are there any applications pending right now with MSBA for anything? No?
Not to my knowledge.
We had the last one was what, the middle school roof that got approved, but we never, yeah. Yeah, MSBA reimburses 50%, so, or 51.
Every town is different.
Yeah.
Every town, every time,
Right.
it could be different.
Constantly changing its formula.
But that's a good estimate.
Yeah, I mean, listen, anytime you do a project at 50% around there, it's a win-win, so.
So that's School Roads project list. Stony Hill.
That's on Stony Hill.
So we did the same thing, the list of items that we have on here. Principals put the priority. Mini splits in the classrooms, we have a number of spaces to be able to put mini splits in the 7 units. inside of the classrooms, that's one of the ones that we're trying to spread out over time, of knowing we can do so many classrooms a year. And the third one is, that's the school that's asked for the emergency generator, priority-wise.
When you're talking about the roofs that need replacement, okay, are you saying it's been 27 years, so we have to replace the roof? Or you're saying that the roof is in such disrepair, it is rotting, and it's causing the building to rot, and we're trying to plug the holes as we can, but there's so much damage being done year over year over year?
You'd have to take the membrane off, then you'd have to take the insulation off to see the top of the decking. So like I said, I mean, after years and years of even slow leaks, there's damage there that you can't see, but with a roof 27 years old, I mean, it's...
Most of the roofs are run about 20 to 25 years for the PVC roofs. This is like your asphalt shingle roof on your house. They could be anywhere from 25 to 40 years depending on the shingles that you get. To push it to 50 or 60 years, you're pushing your luck. You're damaging what's underneath or the water's getting in. Both are not a good scenario. We're trying to prevent that. At 25 is pushing for a PVC roof. We're at 27 now. How far out do we push it before we start risking some damage inside the building or the decking that's going to cost more? That's
Or
the
it could
balance.
potentially already be happening?
It could be,
Potentially, yes.
because because of the age we're at, and they're flat roofs. They're not pitched roofs like you have at home that are asphalt shingles with pitched
Yeah,
roofs.
there's ponding, I mean, the insulation settles and...
Yeah, yeah. So that's the issue with the roofs. If they've got a lifespan, and we're pushing past the lifespan already. We need to start taking a look at what's the right number.
That actually happened at Stony Hill in '99 when they were taking the roofing off. They didn't think they were gonna have to replace the decking, and they ended up replacing, I forget the percentage, but it was quite a lot of the decking.
Yeah.
That was the first year I started here. I was like, wow, good.
And that was 25 years ago.
Plus. That was '99.
Yeah. So those are the things why we make sure they're on the list. Do we have to do it this year? Maybe not. But do we push it out 3-4 years? We're walking on that fine line of having an issue.
Am I wrong? That's what you're asking for. You're asking us to come up with a, like, spread them out, right? Like, really, what are the true asks? What are the things that have to happen?
If we go to like a department to ask about their budgets and their needs, like rec department, right? They'll
Right.
say, here's our vehicle list, and DPW does the same thing, and they say like, roughly around this time, we know this vehicle is probably gonna hit end of life. Like, we literally can't run this thing anymore. And so we have a whole spreadsheet built, knowing like in certain years, these vehicles are gonna fall off. When we get to that year, they might say, hey, this truck held up really well, we're gonna push it back 2 years and maybe fill it in or leave it. And so then it's a moving spreadsheet, but we have an idea when we get to that point, what's coming up and what can be kind of shifted around. And vice versa, some projects might get pulled early, like if we have a boiler on there and then it just goes, we know, right, that thing's gotta come up, you know?
The fire truck is probably a great example. We do that for several years, had it in the back of our minds, make sure we have the capital ready for it.
And, you know, I guess what I would say is, I think that's what we've tried to do. If you see,
Yeah.
most of these projects, or most of these buildings have projects going out to at least FY '30. So it is spreading out. The problem with Sewell is so much of this stuff was deferred from prior years that it's piling up in the first year. So, you know, I think part of it is trying to get a sense of direction for how do we want to start getting ahead of the curve we've gotten behind.
Okay, but then also the other flip side of that is, well, look at, we didn't do these windows for 7 years, and we just saved 7 years on a new window,
That's
right?
what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
like what was the actual priority that we've gotten through it and it's
Was it
still-
really a priority that it lasted 7 years of us not doing that window? I mean, I get it, but, you know, we're doing a lot of replacement on our house. Our house is a 50-year-old house, right? And we can push off painting again another year, but then it's like, how much more wood are we gonna have to replace each year that we don't paint? How many, like the windows, how much money are we just blowing out the window for the heating bills and such?
balance.
balance.
Yeah, and I'll say, if this isn't like a us versus schools thing,
Oh,
like,
of course.
we are all
Yeah,
about
yeah.
funding this for us, I think, or at least I'm speaking for myself, but the biggest concern is like, how do we come up with the money for this? And we're on a fixed budget,
Yeah.
and so we just wanna know like, hey, we know these projects need to be done. We don't wanna have another like Minichog on our hands, we wanna take care of our buildings, but like, we just need to know, okay, if we have $1 million to spend, what's the best use of that $1 million? You know, because we have to go back to the taxpayer, and at town meeting, we have to justify, hey, we're spending $1.5 million on this building, but this is why, right? This is the priority, these are the issues that come with it, and it's an easier sell if you can explain the need for that.
And the schools understand that, and, you know, we're not expecting that all these items that are listed for next fiscal year are gonna be funded. That's why we tried to give you the top 3 priorities from each of the principals, so.
It looks really good. I mean, it was, again, I won't rehash last year, but I think we were a little shocked by some of the things we saw, but it's exactly what we want. I think this is great. It helps us understand it.
I think it brings us an awareness around of things that may not be funded this year, but they're coming down the road.
Yeah.
Which year may be like, it may change, but those are things that we're gonna need to address at one point.
Do we have an energy management service contract? No. And then the other question I have is, well, the statement I would say is, I don't think there's gonna be a year where we're gonna have an extra, I'm just gonna go by Sewell Road for a minute, an extra $6 million in any budget. It's gonna have to go to the town, it's gonna have to get bonded. My personal thinking is, you should get together a list, do a package, and then do a package in 3 years, something that we can pay off over a period of time. We are doing a little bit different with our capital. Barbara is doing an excellent job with, we're gonna use our stabilization funds as collateral towards the loans, which are gonna lower our interest rates on our bonds. And then what we did with the fire truck, last year we went to the town and asked for permission to borrow $1 million for the fire truck. Well, it ended up getting paid from the grant, and then ended up getting the balance paid off. So, but at least we didn't have to, she had the permission to do it. We knew that the truck wasn't gonna come in for 3 years. So that's why we had the permission so we could pay for it as we go. And then we had a whole schedule of how we were gonna pay for that over a period of time. Hopefully, actually put the money in the bank before the truck ever actually arrived. So we're working on a different way of doing capital, Barbara is, funding capital, funding projects. But I think for me, if it is $8 million, you are reaching the threshold for ADA compliance, so that's gonna be a huge remodel for Sewell Road. So I think you have to do it all at once, because you don't wanna, you're gonna hit the trigger. It's just, so I think you come to the town with a Sewell Road project to get it done.
I agree.
I think, and also, wouldn't we need another layer on this? We wouldn't need, like, what is the district's, okay, we have all the priorities by building, right? But is the roof at Sewell Road more, you know, in worse condition or something like that than the roof at Stony Hill? Like that, right? I think we would need district-wide.
That's what we're asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I, yeah.
It's like, per school's great, but I don't know if that roof's any worse than
Right.
Stony Hill or.
So we came to us with
Like,
a
which-
package saying, hey, listen,
Yep.
it's to get these schools.
This is what we want to do this year, this is what we want to do next year, this is what we want to do the year after, or you say every 3 years you want?
No, I'm just saying, this is what we need to do now.
Right.
Let's start off with
Yeah.
now. And
Right.
then we can, you know, maybe we can start using stabilization funds for, I think there's a need for a stabilization fund just for Minichog. So
Yeah.
I put Minichog in a bucket all by itself.
Right.
But that way, I think that's the way it's the only way we're gonna be able to fund $17 million.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be from $1 million a year for the next 4 years. It's not gonna cut it.
Yeah,
My only thing was about Sewell Road was that if you hit the trigger,
right.
unless you get the assessed value raised, but if you hit the trigger, then you're talking about a huge project.
Well, like, to your point, you have exterior doors and windows at middle school for $2 million a pop. Then you have 1.5 for windows and asphalt at Sewell. But like, as outsiders, which project's the most important? Like,
Right.
those are $2 million projects. We would like to know, okay, of these, which one do you guys see as the biggest need? Or if it's windows at the middle school, windows at school, which one has more of an energy savings? You know, like whatever that argument might be.
A district as a whole.
Yeah, because that's what we're funding for, right? Like,
Well, actually, Minichog and then the rest of the district as a
Yeah.
whole, correct?
yeah.
One of the recommendations, some of the smaller projects, keep trying to chip away, looking at grants. I think there was a grant in the past for the cameras, so you see things like security, just keep, if you chip away at small stuff, continue to do it, if the money's there.
Which we are, I mean. Now,
I don't
grant
get
writer would be a
$50,000
wonderful
and a
thing.
$6 million, that's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
obviously it's small comparison,
But everything
but it might
else-
make somebody, you know, think a place safer, so.
all right, well, what would you say right now are the top 3 priorities of the HWRSD excluding Minichog? From everything that we have down here, what are the top 3 priorities, would you say? Just so we can leave here with,
A lot of the doors at the middle school have huge rust and holes
Yeah.
and issues.
That would be my top one too.
yeah?
Indoor keying hardware, I mean, it's a nightmare. I mean, these guys walk around with wads of keys, you know what I mean? Rekeying the building, and blinds is a big thing for safety. You go into lockdowns, the first thing they do is supposed to pull the blinds down. They go to pull the blinds down, and they disintegrate, they're gone. I mean, we replace as many as we can, but, you know, our maintenance budgets aren't gonna do capital projects.
And that's the issue with the interior door locks as well, is lock and the lockdown issue. Some of them either can't lock or they lock from the outside, you have to lock with a key. That
Yes.
becomes an issue, so.
So it's a lot of door hardware.
All right, so we have exterior doors at Wilbraham Middle School.
Mhm.
We have hardware and rekeying at all the schools, all right? But we don't have a number on that yet. And what would the third be? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm just
I
saying.
know. 'Cause,
It makes it fun, right?
For me, it would be an energy management system at Sewell Road. That's original to the buildings, it's run off of pneumatics, technology from the 50s. So all the dampers, all the actuators, everything, you have no way of knowing anything breaks until you get all the complaints. And we don't make the air exchanges that we need to make for current codes. We do the best we can, we go around manually.
And I believe what you have is running
Quality
on
of life.
a Windows 98 computer. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it runs
I
like
was
DOS.
looking for if that was the one that had it.
Goodyear 98.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Was it 1998?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why don't we say?
And that's an upgrade from dialing on a phone into a suitcase.
Why don't we take this, we will go and we will do here's the budgets, here's what's important for each school, we know that. Let's break it down in the district priorities and let's come up with a 5-year plan for our biggest things. And we'll come to you with everything, but with that 5-year, this is the must-haves and why, and these are the we really need, but you know, okay, maybe we can squeeze a couple more years or whatever out of there. And then we can decide, all right, so if this is the ask, and we can, you know, vet it out more, you know, so that you feel comfortable that you believe these numbers. And then we can go and say, all right, so now what's the plan? And then how much are these gonna increase depending on what year we do that?
Can I tag on to that?
Sure.
I think I heard of, not necessarily commitment, but potential interest in MSBA projects.
Yes.
Would you like us within that to try to figure out what might be MSBA eligible and highest priority to put as the first one to go for?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think those are the best projects to do,
Right.
because we don't even know how long the money's gonna be there.
Yeah.
Things change all the time.
Well, last year, I think, was the record low for MSBA, right? Funding.
They stopped it for 2 years
Yeah.
because of inflation.
Those 2 years.
So that's why I think if it's there, we try and it's an easier.
And then how much will we get out of the MSBA? So there's also,
Yeah, I'm not sure of the formula. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's medium income per community or how
It is
that.
income-based.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I won't commit to that until you commit to a project.
right.
But it's an easier ask at the town meeting if you
Yeah.
can say, hey, we're gonna
This
try to
could be
fund this.
MSBA.
Yeah.
Well, no, by then you'll know, by the time you go to town meeting,
Yeah.
you'll have that information. But when you apply for it, you don't know it's gonna get 40 or 50%.
Right.
But once you start committing with them and making agreements and you're taking it to town meeting, then they'll commit a percent.
Yeah, there's a
So
much
it
higher
doesn't
success
have to be
rate.
approved at town meeting to hear from them what they'll get.
No, you'll know before you go to town meeting.
Yeah.
But not when you apply for the project to begin with. You won't know what that percentage potential coming back to you is. You have to work with them for a while and get some costs for the project you're doing.
We do have a good relationship with MSBA. We've got some really good projects through them that other towns and stuff, you know, didn't. So, so then there would be a potential MSBA. Here's the big asks, what those are covered by MSBA, what other ones that might not be our top priorities but can be covered by MSBA, and then let's work that plan from there. Would that be a better for you? And I'm sorry, did you have anything to say?
I just, I had a process question about that, because I don't remember. What's the statement of interest season, so to speak?
It usually starts about January till April timeframe. They come out with accelerated repair and statement of interest. Whenever they send the notice, they send an email notice to us saying the window's open.
Yep.
Statement of interest is usually a little bit tougher because you have to have a lot of specific information about the project you want to submit for. Accelerated repair, it's defined as, you know, we're doing roofs this year, we're doing boilers, and you only apply for that. So it's a little bit smaller
Oh, yeah.
scope.
I'm just asking to put in perspective what the time frame. So I'm assuming we would go, let's say it's a Windows project for $2 million. We would go to town meeting with the 2 million number, and hopefully before town meeting, or you're saying we probably before town meeting would hear from MSBA if we're going to receive any funding or be eligible. Is that accurate?
So the way it works is you submit an application when they open the window,
Yep.
literally. Depending on whether it's accelerated repair or statement of interest for any kind of other renovation work. You submit it, they go through their screening, figuring out how much and who's applied, what communities they want to do. And then they'll notify you to come into the next phase of it, if you're willing to. So then you start working with them. All this time, you don't know what percentage you're working with.
Yep.
Or if you're good fun.
Exactly. So they're just starting to work with you, see what kind of interest. Then they're trying to see what kind of commitment from the town. Is the town willing to also be able to and willing to start funding this? That doesn't mean going to town meeting, it's just going to the selectmen, going to the
Right.
capital committee of whether that piece. It continues it going down the road, instead of just the school saying, hey, we want a new roof. But-
I'm sorry for the follow-up, but
No, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to recall from, because the last time I think we went through this, somebody had mentioned was with the middle school roof.
Right.
And that meeting was, 2 days before everything happened with COVID. That was March, that was a March meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm thinking that the SOI was asked for in,
Well,
October.
What I'm saying is, if they open that window, you're not going to this town meeting.
That's
It's
what
gonna
I'm
be
getting
next
to.
town meeting.
Yeah, that's what
It's that long of a process
Okay, so.
for them to
this-
work through, do the feasibility, get the funding, get all the documentation. They probably tell us about in January, the next January, so that way you'd be ready for the next town meeting. It's not done in 4 months.
It's not possible or feasible for this. Is it rolling?
Yeah,
It's rolling.
yeah.
So
So, I mean, they have their cycle of when they take applications, and then they have so many days you have to act on. And they know that virtually everybody has their town meetings in the spring,
Yep.
usually. So they sort of gear it that you would be getting local authorization at those town meetings, but not necessarily that spring, a couple months later. You're talking
Their
months.
definition of accelerated is different from the rest of the.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Accelerated makes it.
Accelerated for government.
Yeah, I was gonna say, accelerated does go a little bit faster than the statement of interest work. It's 2 different roads you take for the applications. Accelerated repair is quicker, but at best, I'd say maybe 6 months if you're lucky. And that's if you're ready to go and have all the information for it.
So if that's the case, and these projects are earmarked for like FY '26, then we should probably start submitting our interest this year in preparation for the following year.
When the window opens, yep, we'll put the priority in. They won't let us put in 5 projects because we have 5 schools.
Yeah.
They'll tell us to pick the one. Sometimes they've said your top 2, and then they'll
Can
pick
you put
one.
in roofs and it's multiple buildings?
No.
You have to pick a school, a project,
The most
a cost.
expensive roof.
And sometimes they only do certain things, right?
Correct,
Right.
under the accelerated one, for sure. This year, we're doing boilers,
The oldest.
concentrating on roof, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Speaking of boilers, what about heat pumps, changing the boiler system over to a heat pump system? Instead of, because the heat pumps are a lot more efficient and less expensive than for boilers.
Right, but they're still really perfecting, because the boiler has to be electric. Okay, boilers are off of the accelerated program right now, because they're fossil fired. It's all electrification
Yeah,
right
the
now.
state's all electric.
Yeah. I like
So, you think our electric bills are high now?
that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's gonna be a rough road down the road with all electric in my mind, but.
we want the vehicles to be that way too, so, a challenge. But also included in that packet, we added for the facilities department, because I don't know if it wasn't included last year.
It's never been included.
No, it's never been included. So the equipment needs as well, because those are also district funded, that there's equipment that it runs, and then how do we pay for some of those replacements of those items? So we've included the one more page, I think the last.
As you were saying, you had a rolling,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So I wanted
have
to
a
make
list
sure
of
those.
what all my vehicles are. I think my newest vehicle is a 16. I buy vehicles with 100,000 miles on them. Unfortunately. Because they were never in this type of capital
Yeah.
stream.
And the other thing that, Bill Powers is here too, for the technology piece. I know we wanted to address the switches in the buildings.
Yep.
That's,
So let me pose a question, just philosophically. So the principals are the ones who are determining the priority. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but is that the right approach, or should we have a building expert helping, and so who is it, who is?
I think they're
maybe-
working together.
You- are you
Well, we
working
all
with
work
them?
together. I
Okay.
mean, you know,
Yeah, it's not the
finance
principals
director,
just say whatever,
myself,
they're
Okay,
working
the
with.
That's why I'm just
principal and
thinking
some
this
school
through.
staff
What-
sit down and we
Okay.
go through everything in the buildings. And this is the first year we actually, instead of giving everybody, here's a list, you tell us what you can fund. We decided to do a 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
yes,
and
just trying to.
I do really like the process. I'm just, like, I'm looking at bid shop, number 2 priority is update the fitness equipment, $100,000. Like, is that the biggest deal when you're talking about these safety, security? It's great we even have nice fitness equipment. Is it that bad? Like, I just, in my mind, I'm just thinking through, I think this is great what we're doing. Should we rethink sort of the way we prioritize based on, I would think, the longevity of the building, I mean, well, safety of the kids, longevity of the building, you know, they should probably be priorities over some of the other, and just thinking out
Well,
loud.
that's, I think that's,
Fitness equipment has a lifetime, just like everything else, right?
And
A
the
kid could
safety
get,
of
a kid could get hurt on
Yeah.
something that's
Is it
beyond his lifespan.
is it that bad, though? Is the equipment that bad?
if the principal
Can we go
put it
by
in-
after the meeting?
I can show you broken equipment if you want.
I mean, I
I
think-
can,
No,
seriously.
I think that's
Recommendations on
helpful, I
equipment.
mean, it's,
But
you know.
I want to point out one thing too. Just, 10, 15 minutes ago, when I asked what's the number 1 priority, you both agreed on the number 1 priority. Right, you're not the principal, you're the superintendent, right? But if that's how they're doing it at that level, they're also, I mean, I would say it would flow down.
I think it might be helpful, if it's okay with everyone, if Mike, if you could just do a couple minutes on what you do with principals in the summer to even get to this point.
we make appointments with all the principals and the head custodians of the building, and we literally sit
And
down.
who do you mean by we, just for clarity?
The director of finance, myself, the principal, and usually the head custodian of the building. They live in these buildings, they know more intimately. We're more of, here's the problems all the time, and then we get involved. But we do, we sit down, then we walk the buildings inside and out, and we generate our lists.
And then how do you come up with the priorities?
We asked the principals this year, just recently, like in the last 2 days.
I was gonna say, because the priority priorities were never on it, and when I saw the list of 10 items for every, or so, for every school, the towns need to know what's our priority. So that's why I said we need to work on some kind of prioritization so they know which one's the most important to keep going with the school.
Would you say the head custodian's priorities and the principal's priorities are the same or not?
Probably 60–70% of the time, because they look at two different things all the time.
Right.
So, you know, you gotta try to mend them and come up with the proper priorities.
Probably not unless there's one particular item that's,
Stands out.
yes, that everybody just can't live with.
But to Nick's priority, district priority for 3 items, I mean, we can come up with 3 items, but then we have no idea of what the funding for the district would be.
No, I came up with the 3 items. That was me,
Oh,
just as a conversation starter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was,
But I mean, we appreciate it too, that's
Yeah.
helpful. I guess, it's set funding aside, we just wanna know like which projects are imperative. Like if we know that we have $17 million of projects, we gotta start somewhere. And it seems like starting with the highest need project is
Yeah.
usually like a good place to start.
So do you start with the schools first, and then you go to all the other town departments, and?
Yeah, well, we have a pretty good other departments are smaller, so it's a little bit easier to get an outlook for them, right? You know, DPW is probably the hardest because they have big number trucks that we have to pay for, but some of the other departments, like with fire, we have a pretty good gauge of what's coming up. We don't really deal with police too much. I mean, schools are a majority of what we are concerned with, so the other departments we can kind of plug and play, but these are the biggest tickets that we have left, like roofs, windows, doors. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar projects, so these are things that are, I guess, our biggest concern, because it's like, how do we pay for them?
Right, but right now you're probably looking at free cash, or you're not looking at any bonding or anything.
We've had that discussion last year that like, hey, the strategy of utilizing free cash has been great for the last couple of years, but like, we're gonna have to bond for some of this stuff. That's like what I think. Todd, I mean, you can speak to that, but I think there's no real way to pay for $17 million in free cash.
Take longer than more things will be added to the list, so as soon as you put. So can I ask you a question? I know the school department takes care of the buildings on a regular basis, so we're bringing the buildings to you, but I don't know if the other departments bring their building issues, or is that more of a town issue?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Mike's role for the town, so.
Okay, so you're
similar-
bringing them to basically for all the building issues.
Yeah, for town properties, so
Yeah.
similar process where I'll talk with the different stakeholders of whatever respective building and work on my own capital list.
But most of our buildings are newer now,
Yeah,
and so like, our priority is really focused on
the equipment.
the equipment in the schools. I mean, the
Yeah.
schools and the buildings are definitely like up there in priority because we don't want them to fall apart.
Yeah.
And end of life for a lot of these projects is, I mean, sneaking up on us.
Fast approaching.
I want to mention that.
I think the one other thing that's really important about this info, it's great about it, is we're talking about other big projects in town. There's thoughts of what do we do with Memorial? Do we put a rec center? We're talking about $15 million projects or ideas out there, right? And so if the town knows we've got $17 million we're going to have to spend in schools, I think it's important to understand that stuff now. And that's why it's great we have this information ahead of time. Because what if we go down the road saying we're going to do this building here, we're going to this big project for a town, and oh, by the way, we approved something, and oh, we still need, $15 million to get the schools to workable conditions long term. I think you have to understand all that stuff. And I think it'll help the taxpayers can decide what they want to do with the money, right? So to have them be able to go, do we build this thing, or do we fix the schools? It's a decision for the town that, this is good transparency, so they understand what.
No, and I think that's where that list is important, to bring an awareness of what
Yeah.
we see in these buildings every day, of what is coming down the road. Whether it's this year or 5 years from now, this is what's gonna happen, that we need to address somehow.
They get a lot of use.
Yes, they do.
I mean, this building here sometimes is more busy at night than it is during the day.
I agree.
I know you had asked Bill to comment on some of the,
Yep,
and then we got off on a tangent.
yep, we did.
My numbers pale in comparison to some. Yeah, the switching and the access points are really two of the more common upgrades that are needed at, all the schools. They're about, the vintage, they're over 10 years old. They were all purchased around the same time frame. That's why they're all up for replacement, around the same timeline. Yeah, but my numbers definitely, they don't come close to a lot of the facilities
So
upgrades
this
here.
would probably be one of my questions I would ask, because this is what we end up happening a number of times, is we replace them all in 1 year, then in 10 years, we've got to replace.
Right.
It creates a problem rather than trying to stagger it
Yeah.
somewhat. I don't know if it makes more sense, and I know you and I had a conversation of, does it make more sense to replace some in each one of the schools, or do one particular school? Because that way, we can work on a list of what's a priority based on that.
Yeah, no, I totally think that would be a good approach, to stagger it. That way we're not having the same conversation in 10 years.
Which way though?
What's that?
Which way? Is there like some efficiency of a technician coming in and just blowing out a school rather than doing a few of them at each of the schools? Or is it better to do a few at each of the schools?
Well, I would do all the switches at one building or two
Okay.
buildings. That's the best, most efficient way to do it. That way your versioning is the same. And, I can come up and prioritize which order to go in, and I can definitely do that. That way it's not all at once, happy to do that.
Right. Well, could you tell us, with the switches in particular, can you tell us, are there dangers to us not replacing it, or what is the cost of us not replacing them right now, having these 10-year-old? Could you just explain?
Failure, is the obvious, first thing. If they die, if we don't have extras to replace them with, then, we're stuck. I mean, I try to do, my due diligence to make sure we have replacements. And I think going with a staggered approach would allow us to do that more efficiently.
And when you say failure, just to add the educational component to that, I assume what you mean is none of the devices can connect to the internet, which means any of the curriculums we run that are subscription-based rather than books, which is a whole lot of them now,
Yep.
are not accessible to students. So essentially, teachers would have to work without their
Right.
textbooks or their modern version
The
of
old,
textbooks.
old-fashioned way. Yeah.
Is
Well,
this
not
happening
even the
now, or
old-fashioned
this
way.
is
We don't have the
the
old-fashioned
threat?
I mean, even in the one-room schoolhouse, they had books. I mean, now they'd have nothing, right?
Correct. No, we've been lucky, I usually, we're making sure we maintain, and monitoring, just to make sure, we're avoiding those situations. And like I said, I do have some extras. Going with a staggered approach would allow me to do that, making sure we're always covered.
What else runs, just for information's sake, what else runs on, so it's the internet basically with all the switches?
Internet, yep, and
What's running on it that is more crucial than, instruction's important, I get it, but what else, other systems we have running on that internet?
yes, well, all the energy management systems, they're tied into this, so the wireless access points, all that stuff. So it's, the whole school operations basically is
Yeah.
plugged in, so.
In some capacity?
Yes, so everything is reliant on, the infrastructure and the network infrastructure.
Okay. So we can prioritize that list as well as if there's one particular school more so than the other, go down that list.
Yeah, I think we're gonna definitely have to.
Okay. We can do that.
Minichog's the biggie.
But what's good about this, and just tell me if you guys feel the same, is that now we have a better understanding of how to present it to you and how to put things together, right, as a package, as you had said before, or?
Yeah, then I think what capital would have to do is say, if this is really needed, we don't have the free cash, we don't have the
Right.
funding for it, then it's gonna be, you're gonna have to present it to a town meeting.
Right.
Or 2 town meetings, depending on if it's been a job or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a high likelihood that we're gonna have to bond for a bunch of these projects.
And I like the staggered approach, because last year when the project got presented to capital, and we said, we thought it was from the, out of blue, kind of a project, because we were in meetings, 3 or 4 of them by the time, but we didn't even hear about it, and then it was like, well, it was on my spreadsheet. Well, there's 17 million for this year on the spreadsheet. How can we pick out which one you were actually gonna come to capital with? And I think a staggered approach and some kind of thing is just a lot better for everyone. Don't want to blindside anybody.
Well, we can come up with our idea of a staggered approach, show you what we got, and you might say, oh, wait a minute, let's put these two together, let's do this one, and then we can come up with one that we all agree on.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, Nick, you're more versed in this, I don't believe there's a lot, there wasn't a lot on the spreadsheet for this year. I think it was 1 loader.
Yeah, I mean, the next couple of years, and again, things change, but there's not a ton. I mean, we had earmarked a couple of the school road projects and the middle school projects. We knew they were coming, but we needed the capacity in order to fund them. So we knew in the next few years these were things that we were gonna have to address, so we've been kind of preparing for that. But, again, I mean, 3 out of however many projects doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, they are big dollar figures. So, but I mean, I think for us, the biggest thing is anything that we can get reimbursement on. So if we can take advantage of MSBA, like that's huge. Because the sell to the town is like, hey, we're doing this project at half price. It's a no-brainer. We got to do it. Like we know it's end of life. We know we have to do it. If we can get it 50 cents on the dollar, how do you say no to that? You know, right?
Actually, didn't they say no? Didn't the town say no the first time we tried to?
It was a debacle.
It can be how
That's right when I moved into town.
it can come down how
That
it's presented
also-
at the town meeting.
That also
too, right?
never got presented really. It
Yeah.
went to a vote.
Right.
And it was on a ballot, and then the ballot, people were just like, what? And then just like people were voting just, there was no education on it. That won't happen again.
Yes. How long did it take this building from thought to being shoveled in the ground?
About 4 to 5 years.
It was 10.
It was 10?
So.
Was it over 10?
I was there for all 10 of them.
I did all the
That's
assessments
right.
and everything. I didn't think it was that long.
Started-
A resident historian.
It started with
Paul Gagliarducci.
Dr. G appointed what he called the Blue Committee,
Blue Committee.
Ribbon Committee.
Yes.
Which is a way to try to give this group of people some gravitas, knowledgeable people. And what we did is we walked around the high school and just kind of took a look at the conditions, and it became apparent very quickly that it needed some serious issues. It was some significant health and safety issues. And it went from there to the next phase, which was putting together a building committee to look at the options, renovation, repair versus replacement. And that started the whole process of the statement of interest, and we had to hire an architect. We had Doran Whittier, which was the architect who worked with us. And they developed essentially the rough design for the building. That's what we took to MSBA.
Well, we signed up for the model school program.
Yeah.
So me and Paul and
rolled
a
out.
couple other people, we went and visited what they said were the models that we could choose from at the time.
Yeah, and they were offering a slightly better reimbursement if you went with a model school.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't remember, like 5% or
Yeah.
10%. But all told, from when we took that first walkthrough to when this building opened, it was about 10 years.
And a 2-year build. So it's a lot of planning and it's a lot of money.
And a lot of steps.
I think it was like $750 for the assessment value, for the assessment of the old school.
I mean, the assessed value of it.
Not the value, the assessment of the building, all the systems, roof, the energy, the plumbing, the electric.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going back too far, Mike. All I remember is that when you took the renovation repair costs and you stacked them up with the replacement costs, it became pretty apparent what had to be done.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, that the three-story addition on the original high school, that was only 40 years old when that was torn down.
That's 1970. I know.
I feel like the MSBA reimbursement makes new builds look way
Oh,
more
it's
attractive.
designed that way.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
'Cause
But I
that's
mean,
what-
we tore down a building that was, a portion of the building that was only 40 years old. But it was because to make that, well, a couple things. The mechanicals were all obsolete. And the other was the code upgrades triggered by the
Yeah.
30% figure. Among, and this sticks with me, the one thing that, in my mind, decided it was we had to comply with the seismic code. So in other words, we had to basically open up the whole building structurally and reinforce everything and put it all back together in order to comply with the building. Well, I mean, absolutely, you're basically building a new building, but putting it in the old envelope. Yeah, and so anyway, that's the issue you have with any of these buildings, and not just the high school, but I mean, those same analysis are going to occur with every one of these projects. And none of the buildings are going to pass the code. They're all going to require significant upgrades.
Even the seismic code?
Seismic code is part of the state building code. And the code upgrade triggers compliance with the building code. Yeah.
And when you renovate a building, it's a little bit different when you renovate an entire building project. You're not gonna get that done in 2 months over the summer. So are you doing a section and moving the kids into the other school, part of the school, or?
Modulars
We,
get
like
involved.
I said, we don't have an extra school to,
Hold on, we might be able to.
We have
be able
one.
to do something.
I think there might be some rooms available for rent.
it's those kind of dilemmas that you come into when you're trying to renovate a school. If you don't do it over the summer, what are you doing to open school back up again? Or you only work on a particular part if you have one?
You get into the staggering.
Yeah.
And
Which
that
takes
draws out the
longer.
project, and which increases the costs.
Right.
We did that at Green Hills.
10 years.
So we need to start a lot of these conversations that we think that we can put off 10 years, we need to start them now.
And these have to, they have to have broad-based support in order to be successful,
Yeah.
because they're all going to be very expensive. And if people aren't paying attention, they're going to just hear whatever the final proposal is, that number, and they're going to be shocked by it.
Yeah, and we all have to be on the same page. Like, I know with the middle school roof, we didn't pull the trigger for like 3 years because there was all these whispers about what's gonna happen in the middle school and new middle school, and, as a committee, we were like, if we greenlight this roof and then they tear down the school, we're gonna be like villains, right? So like, I think, as a community, we also have to be on the same page. Like,
Right.
we're committing to Sewell Road, and if we start funding projects there, like, that school's there for another 30 years, right?
And that's one of the MSBA requirements.
Yeah.
Correct.
If they're gonna fund it, they wanna know that your intentions are that you're gonna keep that as a school for however many years, depending on the project.
50 years is their
Yeah.
measure.
Yeah.
For another 50 years?
I think that,
That's the measure they use for whatever the construction
Yeah.
specs are on.
I think that new construction may be a little bit different than a roof, but it's similar. If they're funding something, they don't want you to close it 2 years from now.
Right.
Otherwise they'll come knocking.
They want their money back,
Yeah.
so you have to be careful with those.
Oh, yeah.
40 million dollars.
Yeah, we got a good chunk of
No,
it.
I meant like the 40-year-old portion of the old version.
Well, demolition was included in the whole project. It was expensive.
They didn't pay for the pool in the district office, though. That was a
No.
whole, they wanted that 300 feet from this building originally.
That's why that's down a hallway.
I said, what are we gonna bus the students to the pool?
Yeah.
And little by little, they let us get like within 35 feet. It was crazy.
And
Those
that's why,
conversations.
it's so separate over there?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
That's to be separate.
And we had to incline it so that the sewer was gravity fed into the existing system.
And they want it funded.
And here I thought the superintendent at the time just wanted quick access to.
Higher throne, the higher throne.
All right.
And that part of the building is heat pumps.
Yeah.
That's a geothermal, but the savings on it are not like some of the newer systems at all. just a plate exchanger for cooling the heat pumps.
Let's just do it, go ahead.
I wanted to say, really appreciate the conversation and feedback from Wilbraham, but I'm thinking that I was at a meeting in Hamden on Monday where I said we would be talking about Hamden projects in 2 days, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we have the full conversation of that. And I was a little like iffy on whether this was enough for the board or whether they wanted us to come back. So maybe after you see what we have to say, you can tell us.
Jack, you want to take that?
You know, we also, as a town, have some big projects, coming up, and, you know, looking at, well, I'm just gonna say this, the number of Hamden students that now go to Wilbraham Middle School, I think it would be incumbent upon the residents of Hamden to, or the town of Hamden, to pay their fair share to rehab, or if you just should decide that maybe we build a new, you know, middle school on the campus of Minnechaug, or, you know, whatever. I think that's important, and I think it's only fair, you know, that Hamden contribute X number of dollars towards the building, or the improvements. I don't know about the actual brick and mortar part of it, but certainly the technology, you know, maybe the exterior doors, you know, that's a safety, anything that's a safety issue. I think that we as a town, or we as the Board of Selectmen in conjunction with the advisory board, you know, need to take a good hard look at this and see where we can contribute and what we can bring to the floor of town meeting, and our, you know, reasons for doing it. Same thing obviously with Minnechaug. You know, anything that you have proposed the last 2 years with respect to capital improvements, albeit there was some discussion on the floor of town meeting, but the townspeople, you know, voted for it, really not a problem. As far as Green Meadow goes, I haven't really had a chance to look at, you know, what some of those projects are. The only one I can see that seems to have been carried forward based on your color coding is the parking lot repairs and extend the fire road. You know, if I were to, you know, again, interior door hardware, sure. Exterior door replacements, anything that could be a safety issue. The roof, oh gosh, you know, I don't remember. I was on the building committee for the renovation for Green Meadow, and I'm trying to remember back how old is that school now? With
Green Meadows?
Yeah.
03, the project was completed.
Yeah, 03 was the renovation addition, and the original building was like 56 or 7.
Okay.
57,
I'm assuming that the-
61, and 03, and 89.
You know, it says it current is in fair shape, but that to me looks to be the biggest expense coming down the road. The rest of this stuff, you know, we certainly would like to see it prioritized, I'm sure, as well, as to, you know, because this is Hamden's responsibility alone, is Green Meadow. And I really feel badly for you when I look at all of the needs of the district, many of which are gonna fall on the residents of Wilbraham, but I think, again, where Hamden, should pony up would be with the Wilbraham Middle School, just like it does.
Why don't we save that for another day? That's a different issue.
Okay.
Different group of people. That's,
Okay.
Sounds great,
Well-
though. Be free.
that's, in terms of capital issues, I mean, the people of Hamden are pretty close to this building. I mean, this building is an important part of the town, and I think everybody is pretty aware of it. And as a result, I don't think anything ever gets too far gone before it's addressed. Looking at this list, well, the only question I had is extending the fire road. Is that the road that
in the back playground, it's all dirt.
Right.
So in the springtime, you know, when we have the frost melting and everything like that, fire trucks have to go back there and
Yeah.
anything like that,
So it's really just to
it's dirt.
pave a circle
Yeah.
around back there.
Correct.
If you know anybody on the police department, we'll speak to them about that.
I may drive by.
But I mean, you know, otherwise, you know, the switches, and I'm assuming this is the technology, are these from the renovation? So these are basically 20 years old?
Right after this building was built, we did all the schools, that's like, yeah.
So 10. I mean, that's obviously the biggest expense, and something that we can factor into our planning. Other than that, I mean, the rest of it looks like pretty ordinary type things that, you know, you can't get too excited about putting down epoxy on the kitchen floor, but it's gotta be done, so.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other information that we can gather, put together, prioritize for you, we'll get those lists for you?
Did everyone?
Can we talk about Manjog a little bit? I saw a couple projects here that,
I'm sorry, talk about which one?
Minichog.
Minichog?
Yeah, just there were a couple projects. I've heard a lot about the seating, the stadium seating, and I've heard differing opinions. Can anybody walk us through the scope of that project? Because, again, I've heard there's safety concerns, obviously we should address that. It is $1.5 million, that sounds like a lot of money for safety concerns with bleachers and things, so does anybody have any more information about what that looks like?
I have some pictures on my phone of breaks in the plastic in multiple areas where there's duct tape.
So what we're doing is fixing the bleachers for 1.5, like what's the
That's a
scope?
replacement. And it's ADA compliant.
So we're replacing
Yeah.
all the bleach, everything's being replaced.
This would basically be an aluminum bleacher.
Does it have to have an elevator?
And that can be done
Yeah,
through
for
Mass
the
Core.
box,
Yeah, that's like the
Well,
issue.
ADA.
What would
It
that,
doesn't
what would
have
that?
to.
Press box anymore.
So crazy.
They can
Would
have a
get
ramp.
us a
Oh, okay.
Mass state
Add one, just put
contract
in a ramp,
pricing.
Chickabee
Wouldn't
just
have
put
to
in a
go out to
ramp,
bid.
it doesn't
It'd
have
be
to.
free shipping and
1.5,
handling.
350, but it's just the elevator.
Yeah, do we have to, I heard an elevator, do we have to have an elevator?
It's not that you have to have an elevator, it has to be ADA compliant, so you have to have either a ramp or an elevator. We were just talking about this, so Guam has done it with a ramp, I think it's Chickabee has done it with a ramp. With this, from the last time they brought it to Capitol, this is done with an elevator that costs like $350,000 just for the elevator.
What's it cost to maintain annually? Is there a cost
Oh,
for
there's,
an elevator?
well, we're finding that out with the senior center, it's $15,000 a year.
15,000.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, it has
But
to be
bi-monthly
inspected.
inspections,
Bi-monthly inspections, fire inspections.
250, 275.
You're gonna need a generator for it, because if the power goes out and the person's on the top,
So would you like to see a
I
price
have a question.
of?
I'm not a big sports person, okay? I could probably count on my fingers how many football games I've been to in my life, and most of them were here at Minichog. Does the box have to be up at the top of the stands? Or can the box be down at the field level with maybe box seats on top of it, and then it would be easier for the box to be ADA compliant?
so what I've seen also is you put the box on the bottom and you use cameras so that the coaches can sit, look down, get the same angle as they were on the box, but they can look down on the field using cameras.
The elevation will have to come from the technology, not from the lifting.
So the question I was gonna ask is, would you like to see a price for an Agawam style stadium seats?
Lester's doing it too.
I
I
think
just
we
went
should look
to
at
a-
all options.
A soccer game in that stadium.
Yeah.
Those are really nice bleachers.
Yeah, really nice.
This seating is long overdue. And this actually was discussed as a possible part of the project when we redid the high school, and we held it off because we were trying to keep the costs down, so.
Isn't in this price too, that, because the football players, they have to walk all the way back, you know, for halftime, whatever, they gotta come all the way back here, and they gotta walk all the way back. I thought there was gonna be some lockers underneath, or is that?
Correct.
is-
That was in the, that's in the design.
It is in the design.
I don't think it's in the 1.5 price. I thought that was a different price.
I don't know, Mike Roy, he did that all with the architect and whatever, like, stadium committee they had at the time, and I was always told there was an agreement that the Booster Club would do the field and somebody else would do the seating.
We will revisit
I would just get multiple quotes. I mean, if the town has to decide between 1.5 for Sewell Road roof and 1.5 for seating, like I think that's tough.
And if that price was 3-4 years ago, it's $3 million now.
Right.
Probably. Easily.
And the field needs to be replaced?
That's an 8 to 12 year, it all depends on usage or abuse.
'Cause I just remember like the build a turf, it felt like we were just working on this. I mean, I don't know.
Before COVID.
I've lived in town for 12 years, so. So before COVID, we were trying to replace the field, or we did replace the field?
That was the initial one.
No, we did.
We did, we
What is
replaced
the
that first
replacement
one.
cycle in the fields?
It's 8 to 12 years for
Is it really?
Wow.
the AstroTurf. But now, you can't put AstroTurf down because it has fossil chemicals in it. So you have to take out everything you've put in, which is about 4 feet of different gradients of rock and padding and the AstroTurf, and bring it back to natural grass.
So we have to put natural grass in now? I will tell you, the field's very nice. And I've been on Holyoke's field, that was probably one of the
Wait,
worst
wait,
fields
wait.
I've ever been on my life.
Wait, you're saying that we can't replace the AstroTurf?
With AstroTurf.
They
With
will not-
AstroTurf?
There's no funding for it.
No, there wasn't funding for it.
Yeah, we privately fundraise for it.
Yeah, we privately fundraised for that.
Who would fund for a normal field anyways? Who would we get money?
Why go back to grass when, yeah.
I feel like every district has turf. I haven't seen a grass field.
Absolutely.
I have to ask somebody, that's what it was told to me.
I think we need a clarification on that. I did see some potential legislation out there that would essentially cause schools to take out their turf fields, but I don't think that has.
Somebody might have told me that, I mean,
It's like the ground rubber is like not healthy for you.
There's a lot of debate about this
Yeah.
field, but the other thing is there are a lot of different info products now that are not, so it's trending away from the things that people are concerned about. So by the time you're ready to replace, there's probably gonna be something that could be replaced that doesn't cause quite the concerns that are currently. And you know, I mean, it all depends on your tolerance of risk and what you perceive the risk to be.
Soccer City is just not a place for fields.
Right.
I mean, it's your money, you could always replace the turf.
Right.
There must have been some
That's what I'm
funding
just
or
asking.
grants or
I-
something involved.
I feel like we were just replacing the
If you heard
field, that's
about
why
it,
it's like in my mind.
Probably the same
Pay
way
for
I
the turf,
heard
we
about it.
use like cards around town. Okay. Wow.
That's a beautiful field.
Yes, I feel like the field.
So I guess the game plan is just to circle back around with some priority lists and.
And more of a strategy.
Yeah, and we'll look at I mean, this budget cycle, we'll look at like our financing capacity and bonding and.
What were you looking at? Did you have?
Our
products that you were
coming up,
looking at for this
our
year?
like big projects that we had highlighted for the next like 2 to 3 years were Sewell and middle school,
Okay.
windows and doors. But MSBA was our big hangup. Like we could not get clarity a few years ago on whether or not Sewell Road would qualify based on the assessed value and the cost of the projects. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but like that was our big hangup.
I think you can't get clarity until you start the process.
Well, we
But-
could at least ask some information what it is now. It may change.
But like, let's say MSBA comes out and then they say like, you can submit one project this year. Then you guys have to decide like, all right, if Sewell Road's a big question mark, then maybe we do middle school because we just want to give ourselves the highest possible chance of getting that funding.
And I think it's important if the district does that, we need to be in agreement with the town, because that's the next thing MSBA will ask for. Is that the town's #1 priority besides the school district saying that's our #1 priority?
Yeah, I mean, we're on board for some of these projects. I think it's just a matter of like, if we get the funding or not.
Yeah. And we try to look for whatever we can, yeah, for sure, to help.
I have more clarity. Anyone else want to bring anything else up? Anyone have any thoughts? All right. No, I think we can, when we meet just as the subcommittee, but I think we're gonna probably meet sometime in January, or want to meet with you again in January when we have it more solidified, so we can see what, present it to you in that different way, and then have you come to us and say, okay, this is what we're willing to do this year, next year, and so on. All right, have more of a game plan. What?
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Make a motion to adjourn.
You second?
Second.
All right.
All right.
All those in favor, Michelle?
Aye.
Mike?
Yep.
Don? Aye. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I think